Hi everybody, I'm Chris Michell. I'm a UK-based astrologer and I'm also a tutor on the MA Cultural Astronomy and Astrology course at the University of Wales. And I want to talk to you today about the thorny issue of copyright, particularly in astrological presentations. When you give a talk to a group or at a conference, you're probably going to have a presentation in which you want to use images. And these days we have to be really careful about copyright. It's no longer the case that you give a talk to a group and that it's only going to be seen by the few people that are at the talk, because it might end up on YouTube or be sold on by the organisers with your permission. So it's absolutely vital that you protect yourself and the talk for by making sure that all your images are used legally. Big companies, especially press agencies, have software that trawls the web looking for images that they might own. And if you're using one without their permission, you can expect a demand for a pretty large sum of money for breaching their copyright. Now, the fact that you found the image on the web or on a Google image search doesn't mean that you can simply use it in a presentation. Somebody's taken that photo and they own the copyright. You can't just use the photo and credit it either by saying image from Associated Press or whatever, unless you've got written permission from them. Now, some countries do have something called fair use of images that might allow you to use an image, but please don't rely on this. Firstly, it doesn't apply in all countries. It generally only applies for educational use and not commercial use. And the only way to find out if you were allowed to use the image is to wait until you get sued and then try and defend it. You don't want to go down that road. You might win, or you might end up paying out a huge sum of money. So how can you use an image legally? Well, you can usually use photos that you've taken yourself, but I'm going to come on to that shortly. That's not as clear-cut as you might think. The best way is to use images that are public domain or something called Creative Commons, which means that you can use the image legally. So let's see how we do that. I'm just going to Google homepage. I'm just going to type in Wikimedia Commons. And that will take me to a Google search page, and the top hit there is Wikimedia Commons, and this is their homepage. Now, let's say that I want to use an image of Greta Thunberg in a talk. So I can search for Greta Thunberg in the search box on the top right. And she's the first hit when I type in Greta. And here are some images of her. Now, let's say that I want to use this iconic image of her holding up the school strike banner. I can just click on that image. And then on the right-hand side, if I scroll down a bit, we can see a button there that says More Details. And if I click on that, we get a picture of the image. And then if I scroll down, there's some more information about it. And we can see that whoever it was that took the photo has licensed it under the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 4.0 license. You can click on that if you really want to see what that license means, but basically it means that it's Creative Commons means that you can freely use it if you credit it properly. Attribute just means that you need to say who it was that put the picture up in the first place. Share Alike means that if you share this photo, you have to put the same license on it so that you can let other people share that image as well. If I go back up to the top of this page, you can see that there's a download link there. And if I click on that, it tells me where the image is, how to download it, what sizes it's available in. And here's the important bit. It tells me how to credit it. So I'd have to say, if I use this image, credit Anders Hellberg, CC by SA 4.0. And then I can use it freely in a presentation and I won't be sued for doing it. Now, there are also a lot of public domain images. NASA and the US government make images available. So let's say that I put in the search box, if I type in President Obama, and here are a lot of images. And let's say I want to use this one of him holding a koala bear. Well, I can click on that. And again, if I scroll down and click on More Details, we can see this time, this is the work of an employee of the Executive Office of the President of the United States. It's free of copyright. It's in the public domain. And again, if I just click on download, we can see, how do I credit it? Well, I don't have to. I could credit it. It's Pete Souza from the White House, but it's public domain. If an image is public domain, you don't have to credit it. It might be polite to do so, of course. Now, you can also subscribe to various sites that offer stock images. Shutterstock is probably the best known, and Adobe and Getty Images also have stock photos. Now, you have to pay for a subscription, but it might be worth it if you do a lot of presentations. What you mustn't do, though, and I have seen a lot of people do this, is download an image from, say, Shutterstock and use it if you haven't got a subscription. It has a little watermark on it saying Shutterstock, but that's not good enough. When these sites say they're royalty free, what it means is that you don't have to pay a royalty every time you use an image. You can use it as often as you like, provided you've got a subscription, but you do have to have a subscription to use it at all. You are in breach of copyright if you just use a Shutterstock or a Getty image without actually paying for the license. Now, finally, let's talk about our own photos. We've all got smartphones in our pockets these days, so why not build up your own collection of images? If you're walking along by a river or a beach, take a photo of it. So then when you give a talk about water signs, you've got some great images you can use. Or see that pretty cloud formation, take a photo. That's a great image for your talk on the element of air. And of course, you can use those without crediting them at all because they're your images. Unfortunately, though, even with your own images, it can be a bit of a minefield. A photo that you took in a museum or an art gallery might count as a reproduction. It might still be subject to copyright. And there's a particularly complex law called freedom of panorama that specifies what you're allowed to use your own photos for. Now, on here, you can see a map of where freedom of panorama exists and where it doesn't exist. The countries in green on this map have full freedom of panorama: the UK, Portugal, Canada, Mexico, Australia, India, China, and a few others. What does this actually mean? Well, here's a picture that I took in London, in the UK. And so I can use it for any purpose I want because we have freedom of panorama. I can take a picture of a public building and I don't have to ask permission. I can even take pictures inside public buildings. You may have heard the story of how Richard III was discovered in a car park. This is his coffin that was there shortly after they discovered the body and identified it. People's faces are shown in this image. That's fine. I took the photo, so it's my copyright. I can use this image and I don't have to ask anyone's permission, not even the people that are in that photo. Of course, if you're taking a picture of a single person, it's always polite to ask permission, as I did for these two splendid beefeaters at the Tower of London. If you've got pictures of children in an image, it's a good idea to pixelate out their faces. You can see there's a couple of kids in the bottom left-hand corner, and I've pixelated out their faces. It's not a good idea to have pictures of children showing. This particular image here does have a picture of a child, and his face isn't pixelated out, but that's fine because that's a photo of me taken in 1963. And I don't care. I've given permission for this to be used, so that's okay. So that's total freedom of panorama. In France and Italy, it's a different story. In France, you can't take pictures of public buildings if they're fairly new, because they're considered to be the copyright of the architect. This image that I took of the Eiffel Tower is fine because it's an old building and it's out of copyright. But bizarrely enough, I wouldn't be allowed to take a photo of it at night and use it because, believe it or not, the light bulbs are under copyright. This medieval castle in Carcassonne is very old and it's out of copyright, of course. But in Italy, you can't even use pictures you've taken of old buildings, which is a real shame. At least you can't use them commercially. You can use them for educational purposes. I can't show you a picture of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, not the real one. So here's a picture of a model of it instead. And I can use this one because the model is in Belgium and not Italy. In the USA, there is freedom of panorama for buildings. So I can use this in a presentation, no problem. Even modern buildings, unlike France, that's fine. But you can't, in general, use pictures of sculptures. Now, this picture I took of the Statue of Liberty is okay because it's old and the US courts have deemed that the Statue of Liberty is sort of in the public domain. But generally speaking, in the US, you have to be careful of taking pictures of statues. Now, provided you take this into account, it's a great idea for astrologers to use and share their own images for use in talks. So I just want to end off with a brief slideshow of some photos that I've taken and used in presentations. Here's a picture of some houses in Amsterdam that I used for a talk on house systems, astrology in Judaism, a picture of the Western Wall in Jerusalem, some spring and autumn pictures, some strange language signs, and the picture of the stone wall in New York, public building. So it's open as well. So that's really about it. Have fun doing your presentations, but do stay legal, do take that into account. And as astrologers, why don't we share our own photos of each other, provided we know that they're not breaching any rules? Because I think that could be a really nice way of building up a good library of images to use.